It's Hacksaw's Headlines, a panorama of the world of sports, stories, comments, and opinions.
Touchdown, San Diego!
Now, here's iconic sports talk show host Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and co-host John Riley.
Who wants to talk sports? We do. It's a Thursday evening up and down the West Coast. Good evening, everyone. This is Lee Hacksaw Hamilton from our studios in San Diego, along with my co-host John Riley, who normally broadcasts from left field with his opinions, but it's so bloody hot here in Southern California, we've allowed him back inside of the air conditioning. We welcome him into our Thursday podcast, John. We're going lots of different places because there are a lot of late-breaking stories that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, baseball, football, basketball, soccer, it's loaded right now.
Okay, let's get started. You wanted to throw high, hard ones, brushback pitches, beanball pitches. You want to talk baseball, trade deadline, pennant races. Pick a team.
Yeah, let's start with our Padres, and everyone has these different opinions. You know, do we give up on Soto and Snell and Hader, or do you think that we keep them for the stretch run?
Well, I think the burning question is, and you put it right there in the headline, who do you trade? I don't think they can afford, from a credibility standpoint, John, to trade any of the marquee players. Because even though there's 70 games left in the season, that sends a terrible sign to the people that laid down enormous amounts of money for season tickets that you're giving up on the season. Therefore, I think they try to rent a player or two going through the trading deadline on August 1st that'll give them 2 months that maybe can give them some push. AJ Preller said it the best on the road trip in Toronto. He says, whatever we do, we're going to address the perimeter of the roster. Now, that might be designated hitter. Maybe that'll be a rental free agent bat. Maybe it'll be another rental pitcher. But by doing that, it means they don't probably have to give up the blue chippers in their farm system. Here's a piece of history. A.J. Preller, in his first 6 years as general manager of this team, traded 31 prospects or name players in significant deals. I think the last as I charted it, I think he'd made 21 trades involving 31 guys. 31 wow. Included hot young prospects that they had drafted or guys they signed internationally, and then obviously moving out veterans. Now, the burning question, if you're going to do something of significance, there's nothing on this big roster that you can trade away without impacting you. You can't trade Soto because you're not going to get 5 for 1. So you're not going to get equal value. And you still have, I think, hope that you can sign Soto to an extension pretty quickly. You're surely not going to trade Snell. I mean, he is one of the front runners of your staff. And if you think you're going to be playing in October, you want him to have the ball. I mean, his last 10, 11 starts, for the most part, have been really rock solid. Now, do you trade guys that are having disappointing seasons to rent a player? Would you trade Trent Grisham, Gold Glove guy, but struggles to hit over 200. He could probably bring you a rental pitcher. Do you dare give up on Cronenworth? Because to me, it's like the scouting report. The league has figured out Cronenworth, and that's a position where you want to have a power hitter. You don't want to have somebody hitting 211 playing first base. Do you give up on some of the young pitchers who have struggled, Ryan Weathers and Adrian Morejon? Do you move one of them to get something? So the Padres, they got some tough decisions to make, but I just get the sense they're going to stay in this race as long as they can. They're not going to divest themselves of name players. And as A.J. Preller said, we're going to address the perimeter of the roster, which to me means some type of short 1 year, half year rental. You're the general manager. You've come in from left field. Give me an opinion with some validity. What do you think they should do?
Well, isn't it amazing how they lose 3 out of 4 in Philly, and immediately we're all like, burn it down, sell them off, and then they win the first 2 in Toronto. We're like, hey, we got a chance. We're just so emotional about this. If they're going to hit the eject button on any of their star guys, hey, you're right. That's a signal to the fan base that they're not in it to win it. Most likely, you've seen. When Preller made the trade, like, for example, who was that hitter they picked up that was a DH from the Red Sox a couple of years ago that can't remember his name, but they gave up like a couple of lesser prospects to get a rental for a couple of months. That's not a bad way to go if they want to just fill in some holes. They need to solve the problem at DH and potentially at first. I saw somebody on Twitter saying maybe Cronenworth needs to be like a Ben Zobrist, a super utility, and you just put a big bat in there at first base.
Yeah, I find it tough to be down on Cronenworth because I think he's a self-made guy. He's turned out to be a really good first baseman.
Oh, yeah.
Defensively. But he's just not hitting. He didn't hit at the end of last year, and he surely has not hit this year. But he's probably got some marketability, and you might be able to get a rental there. I think they're going to make one or two deals, but they're not going to make, I don't think, blockbuster deals. And I'm just not ready to blow the thing up yet, even though, I mean, with the loss now that they had on Thursday afternoon in Toronto, they're so far back, and they got so many teams they're going to have to vault over to position themselves. Now, I was hopeful that, maybe they blow through the Sky Dome in Toronto, win 3 there, go to Detroit and bash a bad Tiger team, come home and do the same thing to the Pirates. I mean, geez, if they could have anything close to a 9-game winning streak before Texas and the Orioles roll in here, before they have to go face the Dodgers for 4, maybe there's hope. But, John, there's so many games they have to make up, and these other guys in front of them are not going to be stationary. It's not like those guys are all going to give ground and come back to the Padres. It's going to be a challenge. Okay, from San Diego, let's go up the road.
Okay, up to Dodger Stadium there, Chavez Ravine. What do you think they're going to do, Lee? They got problems on the mound.
They really are beat up. They've got 7 different starting pitchers that have spent chunks of time on the injured list. And the latest is Clayton Kershaw. And this shoulder thing came out of nowhere. 10-4 record, 2.55 ERA, and now all of a sudden cortisone shot in the shoulder. Julio Urias, just not the same pitcher. Has not been the same pitcher that we saw last year that went, 21-4? He's really frustrated. His stuff is not what it was before. He's had some physical woes along the way. Of course, there is no Walker Buehler. There is no Dustin May. They're sending the kids out there to pitch every 4th day. Bobby Miller has given them a lot of quality innings, but he's not getting them, not dominating now as he did when he first got there. Ev Sheehan is really competitive. He's come out of nowhere, but he's a kid, and he'll have some bad outings to offset the good outings. I don't know what they're going to do with Mike Grove. I don't know what they're going to do with Gavin Stone. Those guys are really spotty, and I don't think they're ready, but they're having to throw some. The bullpen can be leaky. The bullpen can be dominant. Bullpen's been very skitterish along the way. So here's the question, because there are pitchers out there you can go get. You can go get Marcus Stroman of the Cubs, maybe as a half-year rental or maybe longer, and he's really had a bounce-back season. But you're not going to get those guys unless you're willing to trade one of the really good young arms. And then there's the Ohtani question. Do you just put all the chips at the middle of the table and ask the Angels, pick 4 that you want, and we'll make this deal for Ohtani right now? But Bobby Miller, Ev Sheehan, Ryan Pepio, who's only had a couple of starts after missing half the season with a spring training oblique, Mike Grove, Gavin Stone. They could put Brusdar Graterol, who some people think is going to be a closer in the future, maybe into a deal. Do you deal Miguel Vargas, a second baseman, James Outland, the center fielder, who had the good start but has just really kind of hit a wall? Do you deal Mike Bush, who's hitting the daylights out of the ball, AAA? I just ran through a list of a lot of blue chip names. I would think they would be able to go get a quality starting pitcher by giving up one of those pitchers, or maybe this collection of good guys goes into a deal with the Angels for Ohtani. Oh, you're out in left field. You want a deal for the Angel slugger, the pitcher DH, or do you want to just rent guys and try to get one guy that puts you over the top at the deadline?
Well, I mean, if you can get Ohtani, that solves your pitching problem.
At what price?
Well, it's a big price. But, that might be his ultimate destination anyways. This might be a way to acclimate him to LA and really sell the Dodgers franchise, because he's definitely going on the free agent market. But isn't it amazing how for the longest time, the Dodgers have always had top of the line starting pitching, and Dodger Stadium was always a pitcher's ballpark. And now suddenly the wheels have fallen off there. So this is amazing. It's a different kind of a Dodger team that I'm used to seeing.
Well, it's injuries, and you never know with pitchers, are they going to hold up or are they going to break down? And the Dodgers have had an inordinate number of phenoms break down. I mean, a year ago, Walker Buehler was almost unhittable. And we saw what Dustin May was on the flashes of either side of the two surgeries. You say, wow, typical Dodgers. But if I were them, I'd make the move on Ohtani because Ohtani's a difference maker. And by the way, he's a frontline starting pitcher.
Yeah.
In addition to being on a track to maybe chase Aaron Judge's home run record down, I think that's where I would concentrate everything in Anaheim. Okay, let's go from there. Let's go back into Orange County.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the Angels. Where are the places that maybe Ohtani might land?
Well, it appears there are 4 bidders. Agents last week had indicated to me that the Angels were taking trade offers. We don't know if Artie Moreno has made an offer that was rejected, or Ohtani's people said he is going to go on the market November 1, be prepared to bid at that point in time, or have the Angels just decided they're not going to pay anybody $50 million a year for the next 10 years, and have decided let's restock everything in the cupboard and move him now rather than lose him November 1st. The Dodgers, we talked about the significance of all the layers of talent they have at AAA and some at AA. Seattle has jumped into the conversation. Ohtani spends some of his offseason in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle. The Mariners, of course, had the history with Ichiro Suzuki and a number of other Pacific Rim players. The Angels have got a myriad of young pitchers led by Logan Gilbert. They might shop. They've got a myriad of young everyday players, some at AAA Tacoma, some with Seattle. They got a good shortstop in J.P. Crawford. So where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's linkage of Ohtani to the Pacific Northwest. The Yankees are out there because they are the Yankees and they can write any check, and they got below the luxury tax threshold. Yankees have got a wide variety of players. I've been told that Dodgers are really enamored with Gleyber Torres, home run hitting infielder. The Yankees have obviously got a bunch of young pitchers. One that I was told the Dodgers like is Luis Severino. They've got obviously AAA players. There's a young shortstop, third baseman, Osvaldo Peraza. So I think the Yankees are there. Beneath the luxury tax, they could write a check, they could make the deal. Do the Yankees have the volume of numbers of young players that the Dodgers do? I don't think they do. And a weird one is Tampa. And I don't understand where this conversation is coming from, because historically, they've been a developmental franchise. Historically, they've been a 50 to 60 million payroll franchise. Historically, they've been a mess in terms of the stadium, the Suncoast Dome, Tropicana Field. But evidently, the conversation is that Stuart Sternberg, the lead owner, is willing to do this because their organization, depth-wise, has got tons of talent, as witnessed by how much they've been in the pennant races the last 5 years. And they think Ohtani could plant the Tampa Rays flag to help them get over the top, get the stadium built, and really create a furor. They got a lot of young guys. Some are at the big league level, a whole pile of them in Durham and other places in the farm system. Those are the 4. If you're asking me to rate them, I think the Dodgers have the most talent. I think Tampa's got a ton of talent, but most of it is unknown minor league phenoms. Then you got the Mariners with their linkage to the Pacific Rim, and obviously all things pinstripes on Broadway. Your thoughts? What's going to happen?
This is interesting, like on a couple of levels. So the Tampa idea is novel, and the new stadium, getting people fired up. He could ignite, the business opportunity there. I don't know if Artie Moreno would trade him to the Dodgers unless he just got overwhelmed with the package. But let me ask you this, Lee. The Padres last year gave up a ton to get Juan Soto. Do you think the package that the Angels get back for Ohtani is the equivalent of the deal?
Good call. Has to be, which is why I think the Dodgers make the most amount of sense. I mean, I just ran through 6 pitchers, some up top, some at AAA, 4 or 5 younger everyday players. There's got to be some combo of 5 for 1. Would it strip mine the Dodger farm system? Yeah, it probably would for a while. But historically, who are they? They develop kids.
Yeah.
They play kids, etc. So I think the Dodgers have the most. Do you think they trade Ohtani by August 1st?
It's such a big deal with so many tentacles. You wonder if it can get done in that amount of time. But, Moreno knows that it's a lost cause. He's got to get something back for him because I don't think he's going to re-up in Anaheim.
Well, my gut feel is if they trade Ohtani for a package, a gold mine of talent, that'll be the first press release. The second release, he should sell the team. Period, exclamation point, because the fans have had enough of the failure, despite his intent. And I've been a long-time Artie Moreno supporter. I just can't see him continuing to own this team just by virtue of everything he's been involved in there that has not worked out. And now you're trading a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
It flashes back in my mind. The Boston Red Sox traded Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees back in the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
And I recall that the owner of the Red Sox was a theatrical Broadway producer. And as a byproduct of the deal, he got like $250,000 cash in 1905, whatever it was.
Yeah.
You imagine how that amount of money in that era? Well, this deal has got to be as big as that deal in terms of personnel, et cetera. All right, before we move on to the next topic on the table, because NFL training camps are opening, we're going to talk NFL football. John, talk to everybody about how they subscribe, what we do with this podcast, regular Thursday package, Monday bonus package, and what we want these followers on our live stream to do in Fans Forum.
All right. Well, so what we love you to do is to like, follow, share, and subscribe across all the different social media platforms. Of course, subscribe wherever you get your audio podcasts or on all the platforms. The downloads in the audio only space, like on Apple Podcasts, have really been booming lately. So it's really getting traction there. Be sure to subscribe if you can on YouTube. We always live stream Mondays and Thursdays on both YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitter too. But the Fans Forum, you got to type it into Facebook or YouTube. And and then where else? Threads, Instagram, TikTok. I mean, you're all over the place, Hacksaw.
And by the way, if you like sports, please check my website. There's the address right up top, LeeHacksawHamilton.com. I write on it every day. The best 15 minutes in sports, Hacksaw's headlines, one man's opinion column, and your votes in Hacksaw's mini poll. And you can subscribe on that too. Share, tell a friend. And by the way, give us a thumbs up. And if you can, give us 5 stars as a rating. John, let's talk NFL football as training camps are about to open everywhere.
Yeah, the training camps are opening. We just talked about a bad owner in baseball. Now let's talk about one in the NFL.
A big story just breaking on Thursday afternoon. Daniel Snyder is no longer a member of the National Football League's ownership group. Sale was approved by the owner's then $6 billion purchase price. Daniel Snyder is removed. Within an hour after the sale was voted through, Daniel Snyder was fined $60 million by the National Football League, which released a 28-page report put together by their investigator into the toxic workplace culture that Daniel Snyder ran as the owner of the Washington Redskins, then, of course, the Washington Commanders. Now, Snyder, a year ago, had been suspended for 1 year and fined $10 million for workplace environment issues. They went deeper and deeper in the Mary Jo White investigation. What they determined in the 28-page report, I got to read most of it in the afternoon. What they determined is he withheld what was $11 million in revenue-sharing money that's supposed to go to the other owners. There's another $44 million of money that was supposed to be shared that is unaccounted for.
Oh.
In addition, he's been involved in these sexual misconduct lawsuits. He's just been hit with a lawsuit by one of his former vice presidents who charged that Snyder mandated they hide season ticket money, not report that, and not return the money to the fans in a timely process. Daniel Snyder refused to go to Congress until the very end and then met with them for just a brief period of time when Congress did a hearing into the toxic workplace culture. He only met for 1 hour with the NFL investigators and answered virtually no questions. This is a pretty despicable guy. In fact, my opinion is, as it relates to Washington, D.C., outside of the other despicable guy named Trump, this guy is the second most despicable guy in Washington, D.C., and now he's gone and he's moved to London, England. Josh Harris comes from the NBA, 76ers owner, owns the New Jersey Devils, pretty good business reputation, very stoic, very stable, operation of the sports franchises. It's interesting. The Washington Post is writing an editorial tomorrow that this despicable guy destroyed one of the great integrity franchises in the National Football League, the Washington Redskins. And closing comment, ain't America great? You can buy that franchise for $800 million as he did in 1999, win only 2 playoff games since 1999, commit all these horrible, tasteless acts, and then sell the franchise for $6 billion. Isn't America great?
America. Yeah. So this is an incredible story. I mean, honestly, the $60 million, you just told me about all the money he withheld. That seems like he got off light, because it's almost just to make good for the money that was originally owed.
They couldn't find it, because none of the vice presidents that worked directly under him in his hierarchy testified, nor were interviewed by Mary Jo White.
Really?
They don't have subpoena power. That's the big issue.
Okay. Well, I mean, Washington, D.C. deserves a better ownership group with, we always think of them as the Redskins in that history. But, as the Commanders, they need a new owner. They need someone good. So I'm hopeful this guy with the NBA background, maybe he's going to make a big difference.
Ain't America great? Unbelievable. Okay, move on. Let's talk about training camp storylines.
Okay, yeah, we could talk about the Chargers here. And have they really kind of addressed their needs on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, Brandon Staley moves to his 3rd year as head coach. I mean, everybody likes him. The guy I view him as a bright light. X and O's guy. I think he gets tremendous response from his players. But that being said, you have to learn how to win at crunch time and the most important part of the season. And I can't get the bad taste out of my mouth, and I bet they can't either, blowing a 27-0 lead to the Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs and losing that playoff game. That being said, young team, you have to learn how to win. Good headline, all offense. Outside of the era of Dan Fouts and Eric Coryell, and then Phillip Rivers, LaDainian Tomlinson, Antonio Gates, this might be the best offense the Chargers have had, or maybe even supersedes them with the ability to go deep in the playoffs. You got the quarterback, Justin Herbert. You got the running back, Austin Eckler, for at least one more season, as productive as there is. You got 3 to 4 wide receivers. You got a bunch of studs that they've drafted and now gotten healthy and put in place in the offensive line. No holds barred. I think they're going to be great on offense. Defensively, they got issues. They were ravaged by injuries in the interior of the defensive front until Austin Johnson proves he's totally healthy to go with Sebastian Joseph Day and Morgan Fox. And that threesome was pretty good when healthy. Until they can prove they can stay on the field healthy and stop the run, it's going to be a challenge. They do have Joey Bosa. They have Khalil Mack. I think they're a little bit thin at linebacker. I would have never let Drew Tranquill go across the street to the enemy in Kansas City. I think outside of Derwin James are a little bit thin in the secondary. They still do have some cap space. Have to win this year because, John, they're going to be $60 million over the cap next season. So this roster that they start in camp with on Monday is not going to be the same roster a year from Monday next season, because they're going to have to move guys off the roster, and they still have to take care of Justin Herbert and what many approach to be a $50 million a year contract extension, because that's the going rate for star quarterbacks in America. Great. What do you think?
Good question. I mean, this team was that Jacksonville loss was so Chargers when that went down. But, I look at them and you're right. The wide receivers are unbelievable, but I've been hearing more squawking about this, the NFL not paying the running backs enough, and they always cite Austin Eckler. And this is kind of becoming pervasive across the league, right?
Yeah, the league has changed. It is a passing league. It's a quarterback's league, but you still got to be able to run the football. And if you got a guy who is as diverse as Austin Eckler is, you take care of him. Now, granted, the other conversation piece that nobody in the executive offices of the Chargers will talk about is 30 years of age. When you cross that threshold, sometimes your productivity goes away. Ezekiel Elliott's had a phenomenal career in Dallas. He's 28. He does not have a contract, and that's a heavy-duty wear and tear guy. But Eckler's had only one injury over the course of his career. He will be bumped up to $8.5 million if he has a banner season. Then he's a walk free agent. We'll see what happens on the marketplace. But all offense, I guess their theory is, hey, we'll beat Kansas City. If it has to be 43-42, we think we now have the gunfire to go do it. No defense until they prove it. Okay.
Do they have a power running game? Do they have someone to complement Eckler?
No, it's throw and it's run Eckler and throw to Eckler. And then they've got young backup backs they think are going to take the next step forward. But I think they've checked off every box on the offense. I think this is a really good offense, but it's going to have to be, because I don't know that they're good enough on defense yet unless they surprise me. Okay, from that team, let's go across the street.
Yeah, well, actually in the same stadium, So the Rams, what do you think here, Lee? Do you think they have a shot this year?
Nice headline. Roster does not lie.
Really?
They auctioned the whole future off 2 years ago, win the Super Bowl, made the deal to get Matthew Stafford. Good acquisition. Team got old. Team had wide variety of injuries in the offensive front, had no legitimacy at running game. Stafford got hurt, neck, back, spine. He's back totally healthy. But the big issue is, do they have enough around him? 14 veteran players who were starters have left this team since the end of last season.
Wow.
Jalen Ramsey, Leonard Floyd, Bobby Wagner, Ashawn Robinson, Taylor Rapp, all on the defensive side. Had 14 draft picks. Didn't do anything in free agency because they had no cap space. Signed 24 undrafted street free agents. So it is really, outside of the quarterback, Stafford, and the superstar defensive tackle, Aaron Donald, it's really a team of no names going to have to prove itself. Do think, nobody's talked about this, quick fix in the offensive line. I think they've had a really good offseason. Steve Avila was a number 1 draft pick, and he is a warrior of an offensive guard. Logan Bruss out of BYU was supposed to be a starter last year, got hurt in training camp, missed the whole season. He's back. They got 3 young offensive tackles. One of them's got to replace since retired Andrew Whitworth. I do think the offensive front's going to be better. I just don't know who's going to play defense around Aaron Donald, because all those guys I just named who left are playing somewhere else. And if Sean McVay didn't like being 5-12 last season, what do you think it's going to be like this year if he goes 4-13? Because I just don't think they have enough players. That's my theory on the Rams. But you know what? You won the ring 2 years ago. Hope you enjoyed it, but boy, it's going to be a painful road back.
That's usually what people say is, get me a championship and it's okay if we stink for the next 10 years. At least we won one. But here, that's a total tangent question for you, Lee. The Rams have had a lot of different uniforms over the years, over the decades. Do you have a favorite?
I don't like what they've been wearing of late.
Mm-hmm.
The design. They must have got that from somebody in 3rd grade. How could you think that looked good? I like the blue and that form of gold.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Rams horns. I think if they went back throwback, I would really like that. I think LA would like that. Now, granted, the Chargers are snazzy because they got powder blues and they got the all whites and they got the lightning bolt, which is historical in its nature. I just think, the Rams need to go back to what the Rams were from a stylized uniform helmet standpoint in the Eric Dickerson era, and obviously well before that, when they were a Super Bowl type team. That's what I would do, because boy, I sure don't like what they got on that right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Dickerson era, Vince Ferragamo era, that was a classic look. The Deacon Jones with the blue and the white, that was clean. But yeah, some of these new versions I've been seeing have been kind of wacky. But isn't it odd too that both teams are blue and yellow? They're there in that stadium. So I guess it makes it easy for the people that run SoFi.
Yeah, but they got Chargers are really powder blue more than they are anything else. Okay, those are topics on the table in NFL football. Let's talk college football, because boy, there are a lot of stories spinning right now.
Yeah. So these conference, it's a drama every day. There's like some new update on the Pac-12 or the Mountain West. What are you hearing now?
If you read my website, you'd know what's going on in the Pac-12. If you read my website, and I write on my website every day. So somebody help John understand how important my website is daily. Here's the latest on the Pac-12. Media Day is Friday. We expected that they were going to release the terms of a new media contract. It's still a work in progress. The presidents are kind of intimating in the Pac-12 university structure that this is going to be a bonanza deal. It's going to be better than anybody leads on to understand. I'm led to believe that there may be 3 media partners. I keep hearing Disney And now I've heard CW Network, which is diving into the sports world, has really not been in it. And then obviously some form of streaming. I was told that when this thing is done, the Pac-12 dollar value may be almost as equal as the Big Ten.
Wow.
Now the SEC is distributing $61 million per school, but that's the SEC. But the Big Ten, if that pushes to $50 million, that's a hell of an upgrade. If it's in the 40s, which is what the Big 12 is, that's still an improvement. So as many people were running down the street screaming, the Pac-12 was burning to the ground. We don't have a media deal. What are we going to do? We lost USC, UCLA. What's been intimated to me is now there's a theory. If George Kliavkoff, the new commissioner, the new president who replaced Larry Scott, who ruined this whole thing, if George walks in the front door with a TV deal that's going to net them 37 to 40 or maybe 50, the theory is we don't need to expand. We'll just stay at 10. And we got Oregon, and we got Washington, and we got Arizona State, and we got Neon Deion in Colorado, and our conference can be okay. And I'll tell you, if this annual payoff goes to that 37 to 40 or maybe 50 million a year package, that's a bonanza. And therefore, we don't need to cut another piece of the pie to give San Diego State or SMU something. There's a theory out there, and it spins in now to what's going on in the Mountain West Conference also. There's a theory out there. What does San Diego State bring? TV sets? Yeah, maybe. But nobody watches San Diego State football on TV. Hell, they don't even go to the games. Struggle to average 17,000. Nobody in Dallas is watching SMU football on TV. They're Texas Longhorn and Texas A&M Aggie, Baylor Bear. So I think there's a misnomer here that, quote, TV sets are going to influence San Diego State getting an invite, SMU getting an invite. People are kind of intimating to me that guys that I work or network with who are pipeline guys that have their hands on the pulse of the Pac-12, of the opinion, there's conversation, there's a stream there. It says, we don't need to expand. We'll just share this big pie amongst the 10 that have stayed. And everybody's waiting to see what life for UCLA and USC will be like going to the Big Ten a year from now. And I talked to a USC person today, and I said, you're traveling 21,000 miles in 12 weeks in college football. 21,000 back and forth to all those Big Ten games. And by the way, so is your basketball program. And how do you think baseball and volleyball and tennis, because those schools, Bruins, Trojans, are taking their entire group of athletic teams to the Midwest and the East Coast to play games. How do you think that's going to work out? I think it's absurd, even though it was all dollar driven. Okay, so that's where we are, Pac-12. That's where we are, Mountain West, San Diego State. Finalized the deal to stay probably 2 more years. They have to pay all the legal fees for the junk that happened with the bad letters that were written by the President De La Torre. The Mountain West has kind of openly said, we understand the landscape continues to shift. If they leave, they leave. We were thankful that they were here. It's going to be catastrophic from a TV contract standpoint if the Aztecs eventually leave. But I think they're locked in now for at least 2 more years. And then we'll see if what's factor, what's fiction with the Pac-12. Stay at 10 or bounce back to 12? And does San Diego State and SMU really bring anything to the conference? Okay, that's my spin, yours.
It's amazing. Imagine if you're J.D. Wicker. You're running the program at San Diego State, and you're seeing maybe $50 million a year coming in on that Pac-10, Pac-12 deal, and you're only getting, 3 from the Mountain West? I mean, what a difference. Just a radical inflection point potentially for San Diego State if they could get in. But you hear the stories like, is it the TV markets? Is it they want to, the recruiting turf? They want to have a presence, but in the end, it's all money. It's all dollars and cents. So if they kept the 10 and they were able to keep them all together, it's not a bad way to go. I mean, it's unfortunate we're losing those 2 teams in SoCal, but if they have the remaining 10 and they stick together, we might be able to, have something special. But if it keeps eroding, then everything's going to blow up.
Well, if they announce the TV contract with whomever, if it's the 3 broadcasters that I just mentioned, they announce a TV contract, that means each of the universities has signed the deed of rights, the deed of grant to stay in the conference for the duration of the deal.
Okay.
So that means there can be no Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah defections. They will be going forward with this big money deal. So I'm not sure where it goes. We'll talk more about the Aztecs maybe a week from now. One other college note you want to talk about?
Yeah, I always love talking about Coach Prime. I think he's got a really interesting opportunity in front of him in Colorado, but he's still dealing with a lot of health issues.
Yeah, Neon Deion having 2 more surgeries on top of the ones that he's just had. Deion Sanders has had to go back in for another blood clot formation in one leg, and he's going to have a second surgical procedure on 2 of the healthy toes that are still left on the other foot. It continues to crop up. He continues to say, I will be there in camp and I will coach the Buffaloes in August in camp, and then obviously to the start of the season. But his health woes are really significant. And whether this is genetics or whether this is a byproduct of injuries that he had when he played in the National Football League for Atlanta and other teams, he's obviously got significant blood circulation issues that have now affected both legs. He's had 2 blood clot surgeries in one leg, another blood clot surgery in the other leg. He's had 2 toes amputated. Now they're doing another surgical procedure on 2 other toes that are still there. So he's got some health issues. But CU football, it's going to be worth watching.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm excited for him. But isn't it just incredible? Because we always think of him as a player, as one of the most dynamic, explosive, athletic guys on the field. And now he's having trouble just walking. I wonder, if you lost all your toes, can you still walk? I mean, your balance would be off, wouldn't it?
I would think it would. Not, that's why every time you see him now and anything that was related in spring football to the Colorado Buffaloes, he's on a golf cart. So I think that's where that is. Never forget him, the intercepting passes at Jack Murphy Stadium, going down the sidelines with the 49ers, hand behind his head, high stepping. I thought somebody was going to come off the sidelines. Somebody's going to come out of the stands and pop them. But I hope this works for them, because he's surely changed a lot of things at Colorado, and he's created enormous conversation and controversy as we've gone away. Okay, from football, we got NBA basketball to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Lillard and James Harden not too long ago, but they're still kind of percolating on the trade market, right?
They are still in Portland. They are still in Philadelphia, respectively. And now suddenly comes the stories, they may not be tradable. It had been thought immediately right around the NBA draft that Damian Lillard was going to be traded to Miami in a big package deal. But the deeper they've dug into this, Miami doesn't have the right fit of players that Portland wants, and Portland's not giving away the franchise player. We find out now about his contract. He's got 4 more years to go on it. The last 2 years, John, his dollar value is $60 million per season, the last 2 years of the contract, at age 35 and 36. Suddenly Miami says, no, we're not doing that. And by the way, if you want to move him, maybe Portland should pay a piece of the contract each year. So that's a big issue. James Harden, coaching staff just coming in. Nick Nurse does not want to move him. That's a big issue. I think the other issue is this is age 36. And the third issue is what trails James Harden. There's a chemistry issue here. You look at James Harden, unhappy Oklahoma City, unhappy in Houston. James Harden, unhappy other places. You're going to inherit that if you're the LA Clippers. And the other thing is, the Clippers don't have what Philadelphia really wants. Clippers have got forwards with big contracts they're trying to move, and Philadelphia wants young pieces and high draft picks. Clips don't have many of them. So as much as Harden wants to play there, I just don't know how this deal gets done. So suddenly they're at a stalemate in Philadelphia in terms of conversation. And I think the Clippers have the player issue. They got the salary cap issue. And Philadelphia's got the reputation issue that is in his suitcase of being chronically unhappy. Everywhere he's been, there have been some problems somewhere down the road. So that's why those deals have not been made yet. And of course, obviously, the Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, max contract thing kind of looms out there right now.
Wow. I mean, it's tough. Portland, remember back in the 70s, they were really good. They won an NBA championship.
Oh, Clyde Drexler and the boys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and even back earlier with Bill Walton and that whole group.
Rip City.
Yeah. So, sometimes you forget about Portland, of all the cities in America, sports cities. So I always like it when Portland is, relevant. And it's a shame that Lillard, who is probably a national treasure that a lot of people don't get to see. But I think the NBA has changed so much in the last 10 to 20 years where players are dictating where they go. You don't really see that as much in the other sports, but maybe there's a limit to that, to your point, because of the way the rosters are constructed.
Well, as the contracts have exploded, now suddenly you're not trading for just Damian Lillard. You're trading for the extended contract, and you're trading for what's at the end of the contract, which has massive salary cap implications. He wants out. Portland's not getting him away, and now suddenly there's teams that might have liked him look at that deal and say, whoa, not me. You pay for some of it maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And Portland is demanding crown jewels for their marquee jewel of a player. All right, before we move on, explain Fans Forum and what's going to happen a couple minutes from now for everybody who's with us on our live stream.
Yeah, so we can get you involved in Fans Forum. I see a bunch of guys here. I see John and Emmanuel and Manny and George. So if you want to jump in there with some questions or comments for Hacksaw, type in your question or comment in the live chat on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll get you involved.
And a reminder, if you like sports, please check my website. I write on it every day. I want you to message everybody. You can subscribe to also get the alerts. Hacksaw's headlines, best 15 minutes in sports, one man's opinion column, and take part in my Hacksaw mini polls. It's just absolutely amazing, the volume of information that you get.
It is amazing.
Okay, let's move on. Well, what a great Thursday it was in pro soccer.
Yeah, we're gonna kick off Women's World Cup. I'm fired up.
Yeah, Team USA plays Friday. It'll be a 6 p.m. West Coast start against Vietnam. This is a very different Women's World Cup. Field has been expanded, John, to 32. It's never been like that before. 8 newcomers have never played in World Cup competition globally. They're in this tournament, including Team USA's foe, Vietnam. There's huge controversy, and FIFA is walking around like there's no problem. FIFA is the governing body of football across the globe. Team USA, women's team, if they go the distance, Team USA will be grossly underpaid compared to what the men got. And here's the total dollar value. FIFA has confirmed last year in Qatar, the men's tournament, the men's collective prize pool was $440 million.
Mm-hmm.
This year, the women's collective pool is $110 million. That's all that FIFA is making available. There's a terrible, terrible imbalance. And the women are really upset. And of course, Team USA's women, led by Megan Rapinoe, she was very vocal, which led to a lawsuit, which led to a settlement in which the men and women wearing red, white, and blue get equal pay for international play. So that's the next crisis on the horizon. But FIFA's walking around saying, enjoy the tournament. Don't worry about $440 million versus $110 million.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an uproar coming in women's soccer over the disparity in pay. Team USA, Alex Morgan, Megan, the power player that Morgan is, the great dead ball talent that Megan is. And now we see the next generation, which is going to be featured. Keep in mind names like Allie Thompson. Keep in mind Trinity Rodman. Keep in mind Sophia Smith. This is the next group, because Alex and Megan are probably, this is the last time we're ever going to see them play. One upset already on opening day, Norway. Norway got beat 1-0 in the first game they played in group play. And like I say, this is really different. We got all these new teams, different styles coming on board. So this can be a fascinating 3 to 4 weeks of women's soccer. And Team USA, first throw-in, 6 p.m. West Coast time on Friday against Vietnam. They got Portugal in their group. Obviously an opportunity to move on to the knockout round.
Well, yeah, it's great that we're actually going to see it at a normal American time, because I know some of these games are on in the wee hours of the morning, depending on when they break down under. But it as much as we want to see, the men and women on par, I mean, the reality is that there's a lot more corporate sponsorship. There's way more money in the men's game. You may not like that, but that's the reality. So the fact that, one gets 400 million, the other one gets 100 something, 110. I mean, that's just business. Now, if Team USA decides to balance the scale and spread the wealth around, that's on them. But, I think the Women's World Cup has only been in existence for a pretty short time. Yeah. So it's not as big of a worldwide phenomenon as it is for the men.
They did not trigger the amount of TV revenue they had hoped for, because the sport, as good as it is, dynamic as it is in some pockets of the country, has not arrived globally. It was interesting at the final press conference yesterday. Somebody posed a question down under in Australia at the press conference: why has Team USA dominated and why is the globe trailing to catch up? And somebody mentioned something I had never, ever thought. Title IX.
Hey,
Title IX in college athletics has just been a difference maker in terms of growing talent, funding intercollegiate programs, allowing women to compete at the peak level in their conference. And I don't care whether you're at USC as a Lady Trojan or you're at Dartmouth College in New England. They said Title IX has fast forwarded the development of female and all types of sports, and that's not the same in Europe, and it's surely not the same in South America. Isn't that intriguing?
That is interesting. But it makes sense because, in Europe, they have this amazing developmental program for young boys. And America was always at, the disadvantage.
Exactly.
Because we only had really college as that pathway. Well, now flip it around. Now the college program for the women put them at the top of the heap. Good on them.
Yeah. On we go. Let's talk about what's happening in England. It just started on a Thursday. It's going to be fun before it's over.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see the course and the wind-swept conditions there along the Irish Sea.
Well, it opened with rain, and when you're playing in the British Open, the weather can change. You could get all four seasons in one day. The other thing is the course, the Royal Liverpool course in Hoylake, has just kind of been reconstructed. They have a 17th hole. It's only 136 yards long, but it abuts the sea. And the green is like a postage stamp. And the green rolls. And if you hit it on the wrong side of the pin placement, it could roll from the green into the ocean. If you hit it on the other side, it rolls from the green into that's a pot bunker.
Wow.
It's phenomenal. The big names teed off. Like, obviously, you didn't get up at 1:35 this morning to watch the opening ceremonies in the first round, but they did tee off. Tommy Fleetwood is part of a three-way tie for first place after the first round. All the big names struggled. Mm-hmm. Most of them are 4 to 5 shots back. Rory McIlroy, who just can't find his putter in his bag, he didn't make hardly any putts in his final round at the Scottish Open, even though he was right there at the finish line. He struggled to make putts today. Virtually everybody else did, from Dustin Johnson from the LIV to Phil Mickelson. To it was really surprising that those guys are the leaders. The leaders are at 5 under. The bulk of the big names that we're familiar with were anywhere from 1 under to 3 over, which wow. That puts them in a big hole going to the second day cut day, and obviously they have to make up a lot of ground. And nobody knows what the weather's going to be like. I love the festivities. I will tell you that if you close your eyes, you just think about St. Andrews and Carnoustie and Royal Latham and Royal Liverpool and just a great array of British Open courses. And if those courses could talk, would they tell you a story about the great golf that's been played since the early 1800s by Sir Thomas More there? But it's going to be interesting. And on top of everything else, with the course and who's hot and who's not, John Ram stands at the press conference yesterday before the first round started, and he was asked his impressions of where we're going with the PGA and the LIV and Congress and all that. And he's the only one that said this. PGA should not have to pay any of our players any loyalty bonus. Nobody's ever said that. He says, we make a great living. We have the best tour in the world. We don't need a loyalty bonus. But every guy who defected has to pay a re-entrance fee. or you might call it a fine. They have to answer for what they did when they violated their card. So whereas Rory McIlroy has just kind of gone silent, John Rahm stands up and says, this is what I think. This is what should happen. By the way, we don't need loyalty bonus money. We make a great living on the PGA Tour. And he's not an American. He's a Spaniard. Interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting angle. I mean, but definitely, the guys that remained on the PGA Tour, you would think they would kind of be, given a little something, but, maybe just proud of who he is and the line that he took on this whole game. But the thing I'm thinking about here with the British Open is that when we see golf played in America, there's so many trees and the lush greens, bright green colors. And you go out to England and it's like you're playing on the moon.
It's called the links.
Yeah.
Actually, it kind of resembles the back 40 here behind your mansion, kind of rolling hills and open. But I mean, you have to learn how to cope, because these elements in England and Scotland are so different than what we're playing in the U.S. Historically, the U.S. Open has been just a very tough place to play. It's an obstacle course, not so much a golf course. But here, this is an obstacle course, and you got to deal with the elements, because all these courses are on the Irish Sea, or the Firth, as they call them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's phenomenal. If you get a chance to look at any of the second round, third round, fourth round Sunday, just look at the courses, look at the high rough, understand how the wind blows that might change.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, if it rains, you're in big trouble. Bring your poncho.
Right.
And just watch the greens, because they play slick and they have bounces. And I just think it's the most entertaining thing of golf. I think it's just wears the golfers out emotionally, because they're not just playing the course. They're not dealing with the pressure of being in the British Open. They're dealing with all those elements that are circling around on the pressure points, et cetera. I think it's a fascinating 4-day event.
It's going to be fun to watch. We just watched Wimbledon, right? And we saw they had a royal box at Wimbledon, and I saw, the Princess Kate was there. And are they going to have the royalty there up in Liverpool for this, do you think?
I have not heard that, but it might well be.
Yeah,
because they do appear at events. And this is a big event.
Oh,
okay, on we go. Fans Forum. We got questions, answers, opinions. Let's see what the people on our live stream have got to say. Where do you want to take us?
Okay, let's start here with John. He says, if Soto would agree to an extension with the Padres, I think it would energize the clubhouse. Saw how players holding out for free agency really messed up the Nationals clubhouse.
The only thing you need to know, any conversation involves Juan Soto and the San Diego Padres, is Scott Boras. Boras is going to take this client on the open market November 1 after next season, after 2024. And then the Padres will try to bid if they still retain him, or maybe they trade him before that point in time if this thing comes off the tracks. But because of that guy, Scott Boras, John, I don't think there's any deal coming. Boras wants to take this next client to $50 million, although it appears to me Ohtani is going to be the first one that's going to get to the magic $50 million mark.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are wondering, how valuable is Soto? I mean, is he 440 million, valuable? Is he 500-600 million? I mean, obviously Ohtani's a layer up from that, but we've just seen enough of him. We realize his defense isn't what it should be. A lot of times he's looking for the walk rather than looking to drive the ball. So you're like, well, what is his value? Maybe he passed up the best deal he was going to get in Washington.
Could well be. He's represented by Scott Boras, who's going to try to get him the mega deal. Only time will tell, but that's why there is no deal right now, and probably won't be a deal, because that name is going to take that player on the open market. Next question.
Next question here. This is from Emmanuel. He says, talking about the Pac-12, does the Pac-12 network continue, or does it become part of a streaming service?
Yeah, I think it evaporates. And I think based on what I've been able to piecemeal together, there will be an on-live presence. I don't know whether it's going to be Disney and ESPN or ABC. There will be a live TV network presence. Now we're led to believe there might be a second network, which might be the CW, which is now diving into professional sports. Then there will be a streaming service, and I'm not sure if that's Apple or who that is, but there could be as many as 3 different partnerships to watch these games, see these games, et cetera. And I think that's why it's taken so long, because you got the cord cutting problem with cable. You've got obviously the advertising economic issue, which is impacting who's bidding and how much they're bidding. And now all of a sudden, these late gamers have jumped in here and want to be part of it and come up with a piece of the pie. So I would think within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to get definition of how that structure looks with the Pac-12 conference. And the Pac-12 network was a disaster. Larry Scott goes off in the sunset, got a big payday, burned it through an awful lot of money, leading the Pac-12, created the Pac-12 network, and then they never, ever got the kind of distribution that they needed, which I think really hurt the conference a great deal.
It's just interesting how, all these conferences are built. I mean, if you were to blow up the whole model, how would you rebuild it? Would you just make them regional conferences, or would you have them as tiers like SEC 1, Big Ten 2? I mean, what's your angle on the right way to do it?
The money's driving everything. So no, nothing's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to restructure so they take less money.
Of course not.
I mean, and each of these conferences thinks that they're a power player. Southeastern Conference and Pac-10, Big 12, Big 10, ACC is kind of hanging on for life. But those are the power guys, and there's nothing going to change that. There's not going to be any structure there. The group of 5 guys, and we'll talk more about this. To be an AD in a group of 5 school right now, I think is really, really hard because of the economics that are going on in the world of sports. We move on, and this is from Manny, and he says, "Who's the team leader or team captain for the Padres? I know the Dodgers have 2, Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman." I think that's a problem because I don't think the Padres have one. I'm not going to be cruel and say there's a bunch of independent contractors in this clubhouse, but I just don't think that the Padres have that type of leadership. I mean, the ace of your pitching staff, Yu Darvish, does not speak English. I mean, he's a great pro. My goodness, what a nice career. Joe Musgrove might well be, but pitchers normally are not the leaders in the clubhouse. Blake Snell is just a really different persona, so he's not a leader. Maybe Tatis becomes that leader. I don't sense Machado is that leader. I think Machado is just a great individual player, and he might be a future Hall of Famer. And I just don't know where Soto is in terms of being a complete package guy. And every time we talk about Soto, it's always about dollars. It's about the contract, or where does he fit? Will he be traded? Manny, you raise a great point. I think it's a leaderless team, and I think maybe indirectly that's a bit of an issue.
I think Manny is growing into the role. When he was a punk in Baltimore, he was not a leader, but he's matured, and I'm seeing some aspects of that, just how he conducts business while he's in the dugout. But Musgrove clearly is a leader in that clubhouse on the pitching side. But he made some interesting comments. He said, we'd still be a good team if we didn't have Blake Snell or Josh Hader. What'd you think about that?
I don't buy that, because you would be down 2 of your marquee pitchers. Who are you going to replace them with?
Yeah.
Who do you think at El Paso? Who do you think at San Antonio you're going to replace him with?
I'm just surprised he said it out loud.
Well, he speaks his mind. That's okay. No problem there. I think he's obviously protective of everything that's in that clubhouse downstairs at Petco Park, but he is a leader, but sometimes it's tough for pitchers, quote pitchers, to actually be leaders of the rest of the everyday roster. We move on. So let's get some of our social media commenters in here, and we'll start with some Clippers talk. How about that? And this is from Peter C51 on Instagram. Says, as a fan of Kawhi, he once had the league in his hands. Now he can't even play half a season. Paul George hasn't been the same since his Oklahoma City days. Rebuild, get what you can now before it's too late. Well, there's 2 ways to look at it. You're so really close if you could keep Kawhi and PG on the floor that if you make the deal to get James Harden and some of the young kids that you have played that have shown flashes take the next step up, you're really close. But are you close to the point you're going to give max contracts to Kawhi Leonard and Paul George? We talked about that last week. The max contract is 4 years, $220. They're not taking anything less. And if you don't give it to them, then it's a signal they're going to leave at the end of this coming season. So the Clippers are really at a tough crossroads as to what do they do? Do they trade what they have left to try to get Harden and that becomes the big 3 and that works? Or do you give up just because of the bad injury history between Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Tough call for Steve Ballmer, really tough call. But to me, they are so close. I would just try to keep it together and go one more time. And if they break down again this year, let them walk, let them opt out, and then you get into total rebuild mode. Right. If you trade them, I don't think you're going to get superstar, quote, value back in the package that's delivered to your front door because of their injury history. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think given that when they're both on the court at the same time, the team is spectacular. So they just got to hope that those guys will stay healthy. I mean, they can't really do anything else. Like you said, if they traded away, PG-13 or Kawhi, they might get some young guys, but they're not going to be, a championship level team. That's going to still be putting it off years down the road. So I think you got to stick with it and hope the stars align.
On we go. Social media sounding off here on our fans forum. Where do you want to go, John?
Okay, let's talk a little Oakland A's. This is from Sergio Fernandez. He says, all the money in the East Bay is on the other side of the mountain, Danville, San Ramon, then up the 680 freeway to Dublin and Pleasanton. That's where the A's should have built the stadium to rep the East Bay. No way in hell are any of those people driving to Oakland for a night game to get their car windows smashed or to get held up by one of the locals for their watches or wallets in 2023.
Ooh, that's pretty nasty stuff about the citizens of Oakland. Understand that at one point it looked like they were headed to San Jose, which is a market unto itself. And then there was obviously talk about Sacramento, the state capital. And Major League Baseball let his San Francisco Giants, he's the one that's got the Giants cap in his man cave. His Giants blocked any effort for the Oakland Athletics to move anywhere to get a stadium constructed. So they're gone. I don't think they're ever coming back. I don't think Oakland's going to get a franchise back. And Oakland, I hate to say, is a dying, decayed city, but obviously their economics don't work anymore, and they've lost all their franchises. The NFL has vacated. The NBA has vacated. They lost the NHL team way back in the day, and now baseball has exited. So San Francisco's Giants, his team will own the market.
Yeah, well, even in the East Bay, one of the social media commenters was talking about how Golden Gate Fields, the racetrack
is
closing as well. So yeah, just a lot of chaos, but it's still surprising that they can't make it work on the East Bay because there's still a lot of money there. It's just the stars haven't aligned there at all.
Exactly. On we go.
Let's talk about, this is a kind of a harsh take here, but I want to get it out there. This is from Daniel Caseta talking about Christian Pulisic. And he says, nothing is worse than listening to an American that hasn't watched Chelsea's games throw in his, quote, insight. Plenty of injuries, no consistencies, too many chances, very fragile, and more worries about his social media than his fitness. Thanks for your service, but stop the drama.
Oh, he must not like anything you said about Chelsea. Couldn't have been talking about me. I mentioned all those things about availability, about nagging injuries, about persona. You didn't mention Thomas Tuchel, the coach, who Christian Pulisic's had kind of a real edgy relationship. Old school European coach versus young American trying to learn on the job. So be it, it didn't work. Chelsea has removed itself from a whole pile of good players. I don't know what their side is going to be like going forward. I am surprised that Pulisic exited EPL, that he's gone to AC Milan, because as great as Milan has been, as great as FC Barcelona or Real Madrid has been in Spain, the league collectively is not on the same radar as the English Premier League. I thought somebody else would make a run at him, but maybe the dollars didn't fit, or, maybe at the end of the day, Chelsea said, oh, he could play, but he's not going to play in our league against us. So it just didn't work. The nagging injuries, I think, have been the issue that has really retarded his development. But yet he's come back stateside, and when he's played for Team USA, and he's been fairly healthy during the stretch run they had with Berhalter in the last World Cup, and obviously this lead up to 2026. The kid he's not a kid anymore. He has grown into a man, grown into a leader, good player. Now, is he Harry Kane? Nah, I don't think so. I mean, Harry Kane's a phenomenal sniper in the English Premier League, but we'll see. He's still got an awful lot in front of him at age 24. So I am surprised didn't work out better, but he never was able to stay on the pitch on a consistent basis with injuries.
Yeah, that's a tough break for the kid. But, when is Pulisic and all the other stars going to return to the men's national team? Because we just saw the Gold Cup. They had their B team in there.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's all part of an international schedule in which the leagues allow their players to go play for their national side. So again, 2026 is a little bit away here. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for Team USA to continue to grow and come together. I am so amped about U.S. soccer because of the next wave of young guns. I mean, I am a Pulisic fan, but boy, when you see all the young guys that they just played in the Nations League tournament. Now, the Gold Cup roster was another group of young guys. You see all the guys that played in the Nations League, and you add them to what they've got right now with Pulisic and Weston McKennie, they're going to have some snipers along the way. I think they've built this thing really well, and we're still 2.5 years out before we get to 2026.
Yeah, I'm fired up too for the men's, but really the women, they're on the stage right now. So
you're not offended that Chelsea guy was ripping you, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a couple more here on social media. Sound off.
All right. This is from Ryan, and he's talking about, the robo-ump here. The ABS challenge system currently being used in the International League is great. Each team gets 3 challenges on balls and strikes, but only the pitcher, catcher, or batter may challenge. If the challenge proves the ump got the call wrong, the team keeps the challenge. Awesome system.
It's an interesting structure. But again, Rob Manfred this past week just kind of put it to bed. Said we're not going to consider robo-ump going forward in 2024. Now, there may be some glitches. Maybe technically it's just not a perfect system yet. But with technology, I think you can solve, whether it's camera angles, number of cameras, location, you can solve that if you really want to do it. But I tell you, the umpiring in baseball, I think, is hideous. The last 3 years, I wrote a column about this a couple days ago on my website, which you need to check. I wrote a column that years ago, about 5 to 7 years ago, the American and National League had separate umpires, and baseball interceded, dissolved that. All the umpires went into one pool. Now you work games anywhere and everywhere. And they restructured the strike zone, and then they put a rating system in for all these guys calling balls and strikes. And it could be pretty harsh if you were a screw up. And we had a group of years in which there was consistency, and that's all anybody wanted. But boy, the last 3 years, I think the balls and strike calls have changed. I think they're erratic. I think they're different from the first inning to the 5th inning. They're different high, they're different low, they're different paint in the black. To me, it's a big credibility issue in baseball. And we've also had an enormous turnover of veteran umpires, a la the Joe West of the world, retiring. So I think baseball's got to find a way to get consistency again at home plate between what's a ball, what's a strike. And there is a human element. I do understand that. I also understand that's pretty wicked crap that Yu Darvish is throwing out there on the mound.
Yeah.
And that ball moves and that ball jumps and there's bite. And then you add into the equation, that catcher is framing pitchers. They've made this a science. And that catcher's bobbing and weaving and moving. So the umpire's job is really hard when you consider velocity and you consider bite and you consider the movement of the pitch. It's a tough job, but you got to do a better job. You got to fix it. And I don't know if the robo-ump is the solution, but right now baseball says, no, we're not going in that direction for at least one more year. But boy, what we're seeing, boy, bad.
Really bad. I mean, balls that are 4 or 5 inches outside the zone to the left or the right or up above. It's incredible. And also I remember when I was a kid, the strike zone was from your letters to your knees. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not even that anymore. It's really from your belt to your knees. And they even get that wrong as well. So yeah, bring in the robo-ump. I think it'll be a huge improvement.
I heard you screaming. I thought it was a dog howling, but it was you screaming at balls and strikes in a Padres game.
Oh, this just drives you nuts when you see it.
I can understand you. It's like a bad dog whistle. All right, let's take one more here before we put a lid on this.
Okay, let's talk about Ohtani. He's always a good guy to chat about. This is from David Moss, and he says he had 3 points about Ohtani. He says, number 1, Ohtani is under no obligation to speak with or answer any questions from prospective teams looking to trade for him. He already stated at the end of the season he was going to hit free agency no matter what, where he finishes the season. Number 2, Angels sucks mostly due to poor pitching. Already never cared about the pitching. He likes the big bats. He has no issue rolling out big contracts for big hitters, even if he overpays for washed up hitters. And number 3, he will get higher than $500 million for 10 years.
You said a mouthful. Angels are a mess. Part of me says, Jesus, owner screwed this thing up by interfering. Part of me says the owner spent a lot of money and it didn't quite pan out. Whether it's the horrors of giving that kind of money to a guy who had drug addiction like Josh Hamilton, or just the bad siege of black cloud luck that hangs over Anthony Rendon, who got a ton of money and can't stay on the field. I feel sorry for Mike Trout. He's such a warrior. Ohtani is such a great player. And I think Ohtani is one type of special person. For him to do what he does as a DH and as a pitcher, and the regimentation to be a major leaguer and do all the prep that he has to do at two positions and not burn out, and not run out of gas and not get hurt because you're beaten down, he's a phenomenal guy. From a media perspective, I wish he could talk to us about free agency and his thoughts on it, but he refuses to do it. And CAA, his agency, has said November 1, we're taking him free agent. So I accept that. I'd hate it for the Halo fans to lose him, but it's business. It's not personal. To quote The Godfather, it is business. It's going to wind up being business. I think the bigger question is the next 10 days, 2 weeks. Do the Angels trade him and take a plethora of young talent from somewhere else and rebuild this thing? That period, exclamation point. That's my theory.
Well, imagine if, he gets more than $500 million over 10 years. He gets, let's say, $600-700 million over 10 years. And you got all that money invested in him and he blows out his arm. He needs Tommy John surgery. I mean, he's out for 2 years and he can't pitch and he can't hit. So that's a lot of eggs in one basket. I'll tell you what. But, these contracts keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger in Major League Baseball. You wonder if they're ever going to peak, and they'll say, we can't go beyond that. But the money, the revenue just keeps going up.
Well, the revenue keeps going up. There is obviously arguments about salary cap. Union won't sign that memo, I'll guarantee you. That's why I made my comment about a month ago that Artie Moreno should offer him a 5-year, $50 million per contract. And people just responded terribly. Why the hell would you do that? Well, dum-dum, the fatality rate of pitchers is really significant. Yeah. And he's already had 1 elbow surgery. So I'm offering him 5 at the state-of-the-art money today. And if he breaks down in that 5-year run, he's still going to be my DH or my outfielder. But, you're not signing him for 10 years thinking he's going to be a 10-year starting pitcher. I mean, the era of Glavine and Smoltz and Maddox, that was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I'll be intrigued to see how this turns out. My heart, my gut says that they have to trade him because there's been no conversation or no solution to any conversation that's gone on. And, if the Angels are trying as hard as they can to hang in the wild card race, if the season falls apart, and it's going to fall apart because they just don't have enough pitching, they got so many injuries. No Mike Trout for 8 weeks, and Rendon is back on the injured list. I mean, it's like Ohtani against the world by himself. So I think he's going on the market. I think he's going to get mega money. And the question is, before we get to August 1st, should they trade him to restock the coffers at Angel Stadium?
Yeah, poor Artie Moreno, man. He's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. He's tried. He's made some bad choices. He's made some good choices. And then players get hurt. There's injuries. Sadly, there's deaths. Maybe Artie Moreno may need to just sort of hit the reset button in his life and let someone else have a run with the Angels.
Sell the franchise. I concur with you. And maybe we should just indirectly say thanks to Ohtani. He took a lower price contract to come to Angel Stadium when he was coming out of Japan. I mean, the money was out there for him to go lots of places. He chose that place. So maybe instead of having a nervous breakdown here and spewing all types of venom that Ohtani and his agents, that's not good, just say thanks, because he gave us 6 really fascinating years in Major League Baseball. Hey, listen, we hope you've enjoyed our live stream and our Thursday podcast. A reminder, we do a bonus podcast on Monday. If you like what we're doing, the mandate, the memo, it'll be in your email box. Tell a friend. Email, text, message, let them know what we're doing with our brand new podcast, what we're doing with our bonus package. Check all the different platforms because we put a lot of unique stuff out there. Subscribe and share. And because John has no friends going back out to left field, give us a thumbs up. Give us 5 stars if you can. John, have a great sports weekend. We sure covered a ton of topics on the table.
I'm going to be watching the U.S. women Friday at 6 o'clock against Vietnam.
USA. Hey, have a great sports weekend. Thanks for joining us again on Hacksaw's Headlines.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast apps.
Touchdown, San Diego!
For more content, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com.